Hello and welcome to this YouTube video series, which is an analysis of the Harry Potter books and movies. What I'd like to do is take you through the story as it is depicted in the book, and analyze the themes that are present, and also point out significant changes in the movies. But why would I want to do this? Well, the answer is twofold. First, Harry Potter is a major influence in modern pop culture, with over 500 million copies of the book sold, which is quite a lot, but also shows why it is so relevant and important. Second, because it is such a widespread phenomenon, the original messaging and themes within have been twisted, subverted, and even abandoned by the author herself, so that it can promote a particular political agenda, namely the left. But what is actually represented in novels? Well, that is what I intend to explore, by reading through each of the books, watching over all of the movies, and researching prominent figures who have criticized and analyzed the books in their own rights. So without further ado, let's begin with the first book. A bit of a disclaimer though before we begin. Much of the themes introduced in the first book only comes to fruition in the succeeding novels. Therefore, many of the themes presented in the first book will only be lightly touched upon and covered in more detail in successive videos. Therefore, you might regard this as an introduction to the series and also to each of the themes presented. So let's begin with the Dursleys. The book begins with the Dursleys, and from the get-go, they are described as rather unlikable people. Petunia loves to gossip and spy on neighbours, Baby Dudley throws screaming tantrums quite often, and Vernon seems to be rather short-tempered. When Harry comes to live with them, he is treated rather poorly. He is given a cupboard under the stairs to live, even though there was a spare bedroom upstairs. He is also underfed, bullied constantly by both his cousin and aunt and uncle, and was lied to about his parents' death. Suffice to say, the Dursleys were very nasty people, though we don't know why they hate Harry so much until the revelation is made in the 4th chapter via Hagrid. But backtracking a bit, we can see that the Dursleys always berated Harry whenever he mentioned anything strange or odd, be it in cartoons or his dreams. They didn't like him having funny ideas. Then,
boy.
Happy birthday, son.
Why don't you just cook the breakfast and try not to burn anything?
Yes, Aunt Petunia.
I want everything to be perfect for my Dudley's special day.
Hurry up. Bring my coffee, boy.
Yes, Uncle Vernon.
at the zoo, for Dudley's birthday, he releases the snake. And in the book, Dudley doesn't fall into the exhibit, which might have justified some punishment on Harry's part, but he was still punished nevertheless. Also in the book, Vernon is never shown as physically abusive to Harry, whereas in the movie, he's seen grabbing hold of Harry's hair, shutting him in his cupboard.
The glass was there and then it was gone. It was like magic.
There's no such thing as magic.
The hatred of Harry turns to fear and paranoia with the arrival of a letter. It was an invitation to Hogwarts' School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, which both his aunt and uncle knew about all too well. And so, in a frenzied attempt to hide the truth from Harry, they act in a most un-Dursley-ish way.
We're going away! Far away! Where they can't find us!
Daddy's gone mad, hasn't he?
But as he soon finds out, there was no hiding from wizards, and Hagrid finds them in their hiding place out at sea. Just before Hagrid's entry, however, a small thing to note is this scene in the movie where Harry is seen drawing himself a cake in the dust and blowing it out, which was meant for the audience to pity and sympathize with Harry all the
Make a
more.
wish, Harry.
With the arrival of Hagrid, the Dursleys' fear have
Harry,
come
do
to
you
light,
wonder where your mum and dad learned
and
it all?
we finally understand that Harry was indeed a wizard,
You're a wizard, Harry.
and they could deny the truth no more.
I'm a what?
A wizard, and a thumping good one, I'd wager, once you trade up a little.
Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry.
He will not be going, I tell you. We swore when we took him in we'd put a stop to all this rubbish.
You knew? You knew all along and you never told me?
Of course we knew. How could you not be? My perfect sister being who she was. Oh, my mother and father were so proud the day she got her letter. We have a witch in the family. Isn't it wonderful? I was the only one to see her for what she was. A freak. And then she met that Potter. And then she had you, and I knew you would be the same. Just as strange, just as abnormal.
This is the root of their hatred for Harry. They won't allow magic into their lives, because it was rubbish, nonsense, or a load of old tosh, to use some of Vernon's words. But why won't they accept magic? Well, part of the answer can be found in J.K. Rowling's own writings on the Dursleys. The Dursleys are reactionary, prejudiced, narrow-minded, ignorant, and bigoted. Most of my least favourite things. These adjectives are also attributed to modern conservatives, and might be the parallel that she wished to draw. The problem with this illusion is that magic was something amazing and incredible in the wizarding world. It was not denial of reality. In fact, it was the opposite. And pretending that there wasn't a magical world underlying their regular one was a denial of reality on the Dursleys' part. In real life, however, it's the opposite. The views that conservatives push against are those left-wing ideas like the LGBT movement or feminism, which are denials of reality, which seek to both deny and promote the inherent differences between the sexes without seeing the contradiction of doing both. Regardless, the Dursleys do seem to represent the conservatives, and it is further exampled in their son Dudley, who eventually accepts Harry and his magic, much like conservatives do today, accepting an idea which would have been considered extreme prior. For example, the LGBT has now added several more letters and sexual perversions that were once considered wrong, but now ought be accepted. And feminism has reached its third or fourth wave, now seeking to fully abolish the idea of differences between men and women on a biological level, insisting that men can get pregnant too. Getting back to the story, however, Petunia's hatred of magic, and by extension anyone possessing magical ability, was jealousy. Petunia wanted to be like her sister and learn magic at Hogwarts, but she wasn't able to, because magic is something that is inherited. It cannot be taught, learnt, or gifted. Now her jealousy turned to frustration, as she had to endure Lily going off to Hogwarts and learning all these amazing things. And then her frustration turned to anger, and finally to hatred. Hatred for her sister, which was then translated to Harry. Vernon's anger stems from Petunia's, and also with his interaction of the Potters, especially James Potter, who is mischievous and a bit of a bully when ready. He obviously sees much of James in his son Harry, and both Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon think it would be a bad idea to allow Dudley to interact with Harry on this basis. The Dursleys are nasty people, and they are narrow-minded and prejudiced against wizards. But the principal difference between them and their counterparts in real life is that they have no basis for their behavior. Magic isn't harmful in any way to their child, and it doesn't seek to destroy their way of life. But the same cannot be said for those left-wing ideas mentioned before. Fast forwarding a bit, Hagrid takes Harry to go and get his school supplies, and so we encounter Gringotts.
Hagrid, what exactly are these things?
Couldn't you say in many ways they remind you of the Jews?
Not the most friendly of beasts. Best stay close.
Now, the idea of the goblins being related to the Jews is something that we will discuss in future installments. For now, let's note the plaque on to Gringotts, which reads, "Enter, stranger, but take heed of what awaits the sin of greed. For those who take but do not earn must pay most dearly in their turn. So if you seek beneath our floors a treasure that was never yours, thief, you have been warned, beware, of finding more than treasure there. Now there isn't much to say about the goblins in the first book, as they are only briefly mentioned here and not brought up again. In fact, they won't be brought up in any significant way until the 7th and final book. But also, in the book there's a scene where Harry meets Draco Malfoy while he's having his robes fitted in Madame Malkin's. Play Quidditch at all? No, Harry said again, wondering what on earth Quidditch could be. I do. Father says it's a crime if I'm not picked to play for my house. I must say, I agree. Know what house you'll be in yet? No, said Harry, feeling more stupid by the minute. Well, no one really knows until they get there, do they? But I know I'll be in Slytherin, all our family have been. Imagine being in Hufflepuff. Think I'd leave, wouldn't you? Said Harry, wishing he could say something a bit more interesting. I say, look at that man, said the boy suddenly, nodding towards the front window. Hagrid was standing there, grinning at Harry, pointing at 2 large ice creams to show he couldn't come in. That's Hagrid, said Harry, pleased to know something the boy didn't. He works at Hogwarts. Oh, said the boy, I've heard of him. He's a sort of servant, isn't he? He's the gamekeeper, said Harry. He was liking the boy less and less every second. Yes, exactly. I heard he's a sort of savage. Lives in a hut in the school grounds, and every now and then he gets drunk, tries to do magic, and ends up setting fire to his bed. I think he's brilliant, said Harry coolly. Do you? Said the boy, with a slight sneer. Why is he with you? Where are your parents? They're dead, said Harry shortly. He didn't feel much like going into the matter with this boy. Oh, sorry, said the other, not sounding sorry at all. But they were our kind, weren't they? They were witch and wizard, if that's what you mean. I really don't think they should let the other sort in, do you? They're just not the same. They've never been brought up to know our ways. Some of them have never even heard of Hogwarts until they get the letter, imagine. I think they should keep it in the old wizarding families. What's your surname anyway? Here he introduces the theme of pure-bloodedness, and makes another mention of it later on.
Think my name was funny, do you? With no need to ask you yours. Red hair and a hand-me-down robe. You must be a Weasley. You'll soon find out that some wizarding families are better than others, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there. I think I can tell the wrong sort for myself, thanks.
In the book, this same scene happens on Hogwarts Express instead, but the big takeaway here is that this idea is introduced by an unlikable character. A character that is also shown to be prejudicial, much like the Dursleys. And this idea will continue to be supported by unlikable characters, like the Black Family, the Lestrangers, and even Lord Voldemort himself. The idea, however, is never discussed on its merits. No one ever gives a counter-argument or a reason why they should advocate for pure-bloodedness. We'll delve into those very arguments in the second book when it becomes a more major theme, but for now, let's move on. When Harry arrives at Hogwarts, it is clear that he does possess talent, and this is something that has been mentioned twice before in the book. The first count being when Hagrid tells Harry he would be a great wizard because his mom and dad were. Then, when Harry was chosen by the Phoenix Tail wand that shared a core with Voldemort's, Ollivander had made a comment that he could expect great things from Harry.
The wand chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter. It's not always clear why. But I think it is clear that we can expect great things from you.
And then, during their flying lessons, when Harry was a natural-born flyer, an excellent seeker because his father was.
Stick your right hand over the broom and say up.
Wow. It's in your blood.
Even the Sorting Hat admits that he was incredibly gifted, despite not knowing any spells or even of the wizarding world in general.
Difficult, very difficult. Plenty of courage, I see. Not a bad mind either. There's talent, oh yes, and a thirst to prove yourself. But where to put you?
Harry's talent and natural ability is what sets him apart from either Ron or Hermione, and also plays into another theme, the theme of the Four Houses. The four houses show that there are inherent differences between witches and wizards. The very idea of wizards show that there are inherent differences between themselves and muggles. Furthermore, they are paired with like-minded individuals. The Sorting Hat takes a lot into consideration when placing students, including family.
Ha! Another Weasley. I know just what to do with you. Gryffindor!
But also much more difficult things to explain. For example, Neville ends up in Gryffindor despite not being very brave, but he would prove himself as a great Gryffindor in later novels because of his being friends with Harry. This would also be demonstrated in Hermione, as on the surface level she is obviously a Ravenclaw, but ends up in Gryffindor, where she, Ron, and Harry do incredible things together. This also shows the presence of overlap between houses, meaning that just because someone was in Gryffindor did not mean they were not brilliant or cunning. Just because someone was a Hufflepuff did not mean they could not be brave or daring. But just because someone was in Slytherin, it surely did not mean that they would all be the worst, right? Well, throughout the series, at no point will Harry ever receive any support from a Slytherin student. So think about that, but I will answer why that is in the second installment. So after talking about Harry, there's another person we should talk about. That's Hermione. Hermione is a brilliant student, and she is a great friend to both Ron and Harry, and she is an essential part of the trio. However, in the movie, she shines a bit brighter. In the books, she is a bossy know-it-all, who is also quite shy and timid in real-life situations, and also rather panicky, and is likely to lose her head and freeze in tense situations. In the movie, however, they show the opposite. There are subtle subversions which make her look rather different, or which paint her in a different light. The first count being that on the train, she makes a great show of fixing Harry's glasses.
For example, Oculus Reparo.
Next came the encounter with the troll, where Hermione, in the movie, gave Ron the idea to knock out the troll, rather than making it seem as if Ron knew what he was doing.
Swish and flick! Wingardium Leviosa!
In the book, however, the scene plays out a bit differently. Hermione Granger was shrinking against the wall opposite, looking as if she was about to faint. The troll was advancing on her, knocking the sinks off the wall as it went. "Confuse it," Harry said desperately to Ron, and seizing a tap he threw it as hard as he could against the wall. The troll stopped a few feet from Hermione. It lumbered around, blinking stupidly to see what had made the noise. Its mean little eyes saw Harry. It hesitated, then made for him instead, lifting its club as it went. "Oi, pea-brain!" yelled Ron from the other side of the chamber, and he threw a metal pipe at it. The troll didn't even seem to notice the pipe hitting its shoulder, but it heard the yell, and paused again, turning its ugly snout towards Ron instead, giving Harry time to run around it. "Come on, run! Run!" Harry yelled at Hermione, trying to pull her towards the door, but she couldn't move. She was still flat against the wall, her mouth open with terror. The shouting and the echoes seemed to be driving the troll berserk. It roared again and started towards Ron, who was nearest and had no way to escape. Harry then did something that was both very brave and very stupid. He took a great running jump and managed to fasten his arms around the troll's neck from behind. The troll couldn't feel Harry hanging there, but even a troll will notice if you stick a long bit of wood up its nose, and Harry's wand had still been in his hand when he jumped, as he'd gone straight up one of the troll's nostrils. Howling with pain, the troll twisted and flailed its club, with Harry clinging on for dear life. Any second, the troll was going to rip him off or catch him a terrible blow with the club. Hermione had sunk to the floor in fright. Ron pulled out his own wand. Not knowing what he was going to do, he heard himself cry the first spell that came into his head. Wingardium Leviosa. The club flew suddenly out of the troll's hand, rose high, high up into the air, turned slowly over, and dropped, with a sickening crack onto its owner's head. The troll swayed on the spot and then fell flat on his face, with a thud that made the whole room tremble. Harry got to his feet. He was shaking and out of breath. Ron was standing there with his wand, still raised, staring at what he had done. Then, during the Quidditch match where Harry loses control of his broom, Hagrid was the one to explain that broomsticks have powerful enchantments on it, that no student could tamper with, which is what leads Hermione to conclude that the teacher must have been doing it. In the movie, she figures it out without prompt from Hagrid.
What's going on with Harry's broomstick?
throne.
But another example of this is the discovery of Nicholas Flamel. It was Harry who received Dumbledore's chocolate frog card on the train, which mentioned Nicholas Flamel, and he remembers this when Neville pulls the same card, thus leading Hermione to a book which mentions Flamel. In the movie, she simply finds it on her own, without prompt from anyone.
I had you looking in the wrong section. How could I be so stupid? I checked this out weeks ago for a bit of light reading.
This is light.
Of course! Here it is. Nicholas Flamel is the only known maker of the Sorcerer's Stone.
The what?
Honestly, don't you two read?
It's very subtle, and Hermione did make both these conclusions on her own, but it takes away a bit from the other characters. And then finally, in the final chapters, when they are faced with the Devil's Snare, Hermione panics and is not the cool-headed person shown in the movie. "Stop moving," Hermione ordered them. "I know what this is. It's Devil's Snare." "Oh, I'm so glad we know what it's called. That's a great help," snarled Ron, leaning back, trying to stop the plant curling around his neck. "Shut up, I'm trying to remember how to kill it," said Hermione. "Well, hurry up, I can't breathe," Harry gasped, wrestling with it as it curled around his chest. Devil's Snare, Devil's Snare. What did Professor Sprout say? It likes the dark and the damp." "So light a fire," Harry choked. "Yes, of course, but there's no wood," Hermione cried, wringing her hands. "Have you gone mad?" Ron bellowed. "Are you a witch or not?" "Oh, right," said Hermione, and she whipped out her wand and waved it, muttered something and sent a jet of the same bluebell flames she had used on Snape at the plant. In a matter of seconds, the two boys felt it loosening its grip, as it cringed away from the light and warmth. Wriggling and flailing, it unraveled itself from their bodies, and they were able to pull free. "Lucky you pay attention in herbology, Hermione," said Harry as he joined her by the wall, wiping sweat off his face. "Yeah," said Ron, "and lucky Harry doesn't lose his head in a crisis. There's no wood. Honestly." So as I said, all of these changes in the movie are quite subtle, but also quite subversive, as it paints Hermione in a positive light, making her look much better than either Ron or Harry. This isn't to discredit Hermione, of course, it just goes to show that both Ron and Harry have brilliant ideas on their own. In later movies, this trend will continue, so that most people who watch the movies usually conclude that Hermione seems like the more impressive witch compared to Harry. But Harry can think quickly in tense situations, which is the principal difference between him and Hermione.
Stop moving, both of you. This is Devil's Snare. You have to relax. If you don't, it'll only kill you faster.
Kill us faster? Oh, now I can relax. Hermione! Now what are we gonna do?
Just relax! I remember reading something in herbology. Devil's Snare. It's deadly fun, but will sulk in the sun. That's it! Devil's Snare hates sunlight.
Whew! Lucky we didn't panic.
Next we can move on to Harry's priorities. Throughout the book, Harry is more interested in the mystery surrounding the Sorcerer's Stone than he is in his schoolwork. To him, the idea of this real-world problem was more important than any schoolwork that he had to get through. It even warranted breaking the rules. This is shown especially when Harry learns that Hagrid was keeping a dragon that was highly illegal and not to mention dangerous. Hagrid had to get rid of the dragon, and it was Harry that suggested Ron's brother Charlie could take it in. Charlie agrees, and some friends of his was going to visit him so they could pass by Hogwarts and collect the dragon, but they can't be seen collecting the dragon since it is highly illegal. Therefore, Harry and Hermione had to get the dragon to the tallest tower after hours, and they could facilitate this using Harry's invisibility cloak. Ron was incapacitated, as he was bitten by the dragon in the book, and had to go to the hospital wing. However, after delivering the dragon, they are caught, together with Malfoy and Neville, both of whom overheard talk of a dragon. As a consequence, Gryffindor lost 150 points in a single night, which causes Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff, and even his fellow Gryffindors to turn on Harry, openly insulting or ignoring him. This causes Harry to sulk and adopt a no-meddlings philosophy, forgetting that he did good with Hagrid and the dragon, and also abandoning his quest to save the Sorcerer's Stone. His priorities are set straight, however, when he encounters Voldemort in the Forbidden Forest, and explains this to Ron and Hermione as well. "I'm going out of here tonight, and I'm going to try and get to the stone first." "You're mad," said Ron. "You can't," said Hermione. "After what McGonagall and Snape have said, you'll be expelled." "So what?" Harry shouted. "Don't you understand? If Snape gets hold of the stone, Voldemort's coming back. Haven't you heard what it was like when he was trying to take over? There won't be any Hogwarts to get expelled from. He'll flatten it, or turn it into a school for the dark arts. Losing points doesn't matter anymore, can't you see? Do you think he'll leave you and your families alone if Gryffindor wins the House Cup? If I get caught before I can get to the stone, well, I'll have to go back to the Dursleys and wait for Voldemort to find me there. It's only dying a bit later than I would have done, because I'm never going over to the dark side. I'm going through that trapdoor tonight, and nothing you two say is going to stop me. Voldemort killed my parents, remember?" Which brings us to another important theme: Harry's destiny. Harry is born to two talented magical parents. He himself inherited that talent and also was chosen by the wand that shared a core with Voldemort's, and was the one who had a personal run-in with Voldemort when he was just a baby. In the later novels, we learned that a prophecy was made about Harry, but in this book, he isn't aware of it, so he isn't being motivated, compelled, or forced into any of his decisions. He chooses to oppose Voldemort and to act against him, to fight his return, and will continue to do so. Ron and Hermione would have been content with burying their heads in the sand and hoping someone else would deal with the situation, but Harry wanted to be at the forefront, fighting to protect everything that he held dear to him. It was personal for Harry. Voldemort had taken his parents from him, so Harry chose to oppose him, and this is why Harry is the hero of the story. Next we can speak about the Mirror of Erised. Now the mirror was an interesting way to introduce the theme of family into the novel. Harry's family plays a big part in the series, even though they aren't present. Because of the Dursleys' mistreatment of Harry, he longs for a loving family, which is why he is so taken with the Weasleys, and in some ways envious of Ron. This theme is rather simple, and is really meant for the children, the underlying message being, be grateful for your family. But it is still a powerful message nevertheless. Harry has inherited many of his gifts from his parents, but there are two that continue to help him throughout the series. The first is Lily's sacrifice, and her love for Harry. It gave Harry a powerful protection against Voldemort, and eventually it would be Voldemort's demise in the final book. In the movies, however, Voldemort's demise wasn't attributed in any way to Lily's sacrifice, which I think was a big mistake. In the books, it is. Lily's sacrifice played a major part in the downfall of Voldemort. And this love, as Dumbledore puts it,
Harry, do you know why Professor Quirrell couldn't bear to have you touch him? It was because of your mother. She sacrificed herself for you. And that kind of act leaves a mark. Oh no, this kind of mark cannot be seen. It lives in your very skin.
What is it?
Love, Harry. Love.
And then there's also his father's cloak, the invisibility cloak. The invisibility cloak of the story of the three brothers, the one that supposedly belonged to Death. It was inherited through the Peverell family, inherited by James, who then passed it on to Harry. And this cloak would be crucial in all his endeavors and in defeating Voldemort. In the first book alone, it is thanks to the cloak that he is able to discover the mirror, and how he is able to find out more of the mysteries within Hogwarts, and what ultimately brings him to stop Voldemort in the end. Harry could not have achieved victory over Voldemort without the help of both his parents. The themes introduced in this book carry over to the others, and can be explored in more detail after getting the full story, or upon hearing new evidence that supports the theme. Which is why, for the analysis of the first book, it was only necessary to point out themes as they arose, and also to see how the movie begins to subvert those themes present within the book. One major change to the movies that we see so far is to make Hermione different and have her look just as good, or in some cases even better, than Ron or Harry. It is often heard in modern days for those who've seen the movies to ask why Hermione wasn't the chosen one, since she seemed to know a lot more spells than Harry and seemed more knowledgeable overall. But as we saw through the reading of the book, Harry is quite intelligent as well, and where he might not have book sense, he can think quickly in stressful situations. Even in life-threatening situations, where Hermione would freeze and panic. In school, in a controlled environment, and in tests, Hermione doesn't need to think on the spot. Most of this she would have been prepared for. However, when real-life situations arise before her eyes, this is where Harry can take over and show his real skill. But as Bruce Charlton posited in his blog, Harry, Ron, and Hermione relate to the heart, body, and mind respectively, and when Harry is leading the group, things seem to go right. I've noticed something similar as well. When the trio make decisions together and are all acting with one another, things go right. When even one of these elements are missing, bad things happen. Recall that what leads up to the disaster surrounding Harry's first encounter with Voldemort in the Forbidden Forest is the fact that Ron was not with Harry and Hermione, as they delivered Norbert to Charlie's friends. This was the only instance in this book, but there are others as well. For example, Ron and Harry entering the forest in the second book without Hermione turns disastrous as the spiders almost kill them, and even more calamities befall them when they enter the Chamber of Secrets. In the final book, most notably being when Ron leaves and they enter Godric's Hollow. Regardless of whether you believe Harry or Hermione would have made a better rival to Voldemort, it is clear that the three were meant to work together and make decisions together. Most of the time, when one member of the trio isn't on board with a plan or is absent for a task, calamity strikes, and I'll point these out as we go through each of the novels. Now there isn't much to say about Ron for the moment. Ron is to Harry what Sam is to Frodo, a genuine companion and loyal friend that helps Harry through difficult times and in his quest to defeat Voldemort. We also get very brief introductions to much larger themes, such as Malfoy's advocacy for pure-bloodedness, which we will discuss at length in the second video, and much later on, in the final books when it becomes a major element. There is also the concept of sacrificial love, stemming from Lily Potter's brave sacrifice for her son, which protects him from Voldemort. The more obvious themes of friendship, but much more than a simple friendship. What Harry, Ron, and Hermione share is quite a true and unique friendship that one rarely sees nowadays. Also, the concept of light versus darkness, good triumphs over evil, power of love being stronger than the power of hate. These themes are the easier ones to pick up on, but they are no less powerful than any other. There is also natural talent or ability, the concept of fate or destiny, and the subtle mention of embracing death rather than being fearful of it. Overall, the first novel is light and cheerful, with no subversive elements that children would pick up on. Instead, one can finish the novel and take away from it wonderful themes of love, friendship, and family. If you would like to support the channel, please consider checking out my novel, The Guardians of Aria, on Amazon. Link is in the description below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, or a dislike if you didn't. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.